It's always just between us, all right?
You're tuned to Between Us. We're discussing relationship issues that matter to you and also sharing inspiring stories. Now, speaking of relationships, how about toxic relationships? Do you know what a toxic relationship is? How do you know you're in one? And what signs might indicate that you might be undergoing physical and emotional abuse from either your spouse or friends? So we're going to find out a bit more about toxic relationships today and what you can do about them. My guest in the studio is Shee. She's director and psychologist of the Counselling place, here to take your questions. So if you'd like to field any of your personal stories or situations, give us a ring, 669-1193. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, hello, Doctor. Hello, Shee.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you because this topic is somewhat tricky. A lot of times, many people don't realize they're in toxic relationships. So maybe you can define that for us. What do you think, in your professional opinion, a toxic relationship is?
Okay, to start defining toxic relationship, I think maybe it's good for us to also think about what is a good relationship. And if you think about a good relationship, what we are thinking of is a relationship where the two person can share their love, share their passion, share their interests. So if you look at a very good relationship, what should happen in the relationship is both people are inspired to be growing and developing, and you're helping each other to fulfill each other's potential. So that is the picture of a good relationship. So if you look at a toxic relationship, it is a relationship that does the opposite. So if you look at a relationship where, for example, you are feeling that you are unable to have good times, not that you don't have good time, but you seem to be unable to enjoy them because you're worried about when's the next challenge going to happen, when things are going to go bad. So that prevents you from being able to be free and enjoying the relationship. So that is, for example, one sign of a toxic relationship.
The fear and anxiety that's constantly hanging over you.
Yeah, it's like a crowd that is always there. And also the anxiety is probably because you feel like either you're not able to do anything right, or also that you're feeling quite helpless in terms of situation seems to be unable to be changed. And I think that takes away your focus from actually being able to enjoy the relationship. You're constantly focusing on the other person, for example, because the relationship is about two people. So if in the relationship the focus is fully on the other person, be it because they need it or because you feel you need to give it to them, then that is not a very healthy sign in the relationship.
When there's some sort of imbalance.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
And also in a toxic relationship, usually you're also not able to be yourself. So for example, you're constantly trying to please the other person, you're trying to change yourself. For some people, it's to the extent that they have to put on a mask, they have to be a different person, and they can't even recognize who the person is anymore. And also in the relationship, so instead of inspiring you to grow, fulfill your potential, the relationship is actually stunting that. It's preventing you from growing, changing, or improving yourself.
I want to get a little bit, Shee, into the idea of control, because a lot of toxic relationships involve some kind of asymmetrical control. One person has a lot more power over the other person sometimes. So how do we know when that level of control is starting to get toxic? It's extreme, because some people tend to be a little bit more overbearing. They are a bit more aggressive. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a toxic relationship, does it?
Yes, so definitely in a relationship it can be 50-50, so there's always give and take. But I think in terms of controlling, there must be space for both persons to be themselves. Right, so if it's only about one person, so it's fine to have some say, and some people prefer to be dominating in a relationship compared to some people, they're happy for other people to be leading them, so that's fine. But I think the level of toxicity comes in when, for example, you feel that you are stifled. You're definitely stunted from preventing from expressing yourself, from sharing your thoughts, from sharing your feelings. You're finding yourself editing yourself. You're not being able to freely say what you think, feel, and be whoever you are.
So the lack of freedom is actually a very big sign that, you're in a relationship that's not very healthy for you. There's also the element of abuse. I mean, abuse can take many forms. You can look at it, of course, physical abuse is the most obvious form of abuse, but you also have very subtle forms of abuse that come under the emotional abuse. Can you tell us a bit about what might be characteristic of these relationships?
So for physical abuse, I think everyone understands it's about violence and physical violence. I think maybe what some people may not understand is, for example, physical restraint. It would be a form of physical abuse. Some people, they also don't understand that, for example, when things are being thrown at, or according to my client, near them, that is also a sign of abuse, because for some people, they feel that as long as I'm not touched, my body is not harmed, then there's no abuse. But they are not understanding that actually that physical punching the wall, punching the door, those are actually signs of physical violence as well. For emotional abuse, as you said, it is a little bit more difficult to decipher, because some of it are quite subtle. So some of it can come in the form of hurting the other person by saying cruel and unfair things. It's coming in the form of put down. It's also coming in the form of trying to threaten the safety of the person, the things that they like, be it their possession, their pets, or people they care about, their family members, their friends. And also, in other ways, it can be like blaming your partner for things that go wrong. So if you have a bad day, that's your partner's fault too, regardless whether your partner is actually in the vicinity. It's also coming in the form like being extremely jealous, wanting to check on who you're talking to, restricting who you're communicating with, who you are having contact with. It is also and we hear this quite often, telling your partner that they are sick and they need therapy.
Wow, okay.
So it's making the person feel lesser than.
And if you're feeling all these feelings right now, or you know someone who's currently going through very similar signs, or is undergoing a lot of stress and anxiety as a result of being in a relationship with someone who might be toxic for them, feel free to give us a ring. Chat with Shee today, who's here to tell us a bit more about toxic relationships, signs that you might be in one, how we can actually get help to resolve certain issues within that relationship. Coming up, we're going to chat a bit more about the idea of being trapped in a cycle sometimes when you're in that relationship and how to get out of that. Between Us continues in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
Chatting with my guest today, Shee, who's director and psychologist of the Counselling place. Today we're talking all about toxic relationships, and Shee, we've discussed so far what certain characteristics of a very toxic relationship is, touched also on physical and emotional abuse, what that might look like. Sometimes we have a lot of misconceptions about what abuse is. And let's talk a bit about why it's so difficult when you're in a toxic relationship to not realize you're in one. Sometimes it's you're caught in a cycle and you find it hard to even see that you're being victimized. Is there a reason why this is so?
So people who are involved in toxic relationships, so because the toxicity doesn't come in so quickly, and as you said, it's quite subtle, many of them, they don't recognize what's happening. So one of the challenges before someone can get help is actually understanding and recognizing that they are in a toxic relationship. What we encounter quite often is this huge sense of denial that the person who's in a toxic relationship, they usually, because when they get into the relationship, it's real feelings, there is positivity, the love, and all the positive things that they get from their partner are real. And to them, part of the relationship is about give and take, and to them, is this part of the flaw or maybe fault of the other person that I have to put up with, and is that normal? So I think the questioning what is normal, what is not, what should happen in a relationship, what should not, I think is hard for them to figure out. And this is especially if they did not come from a very loving background. So if they come from a family where there are abuse or similar toxicity they see around them, it's harder for them to recognize that the relationship that they are in is actually not healthy. also, people are finding it hard to leave the relationship because there's a lot of fears, right? So they don't know what's going to happen. So it's not just fear about the partner, but even can I cope by myself, be it emotionally, financially, practically. They remember what the partner do for them, and they also are fearful in terms of is there going to be repercussion, especially if there has been threat involved in terms of harm to themselves, to things that they love, people that they love. So they may feel quite fearful about that.
On top of the uncertainty, I suppose, upon leaving the spouse or the person that is causing them a lot of pain, there's also the idea that the person might be threatening them or manipulating them to not leave that relationship, because a lot of times the relationship, within that relationship, both parties are somewhat reliant on each other in a very toxic way. So we're going to talk a bit more about how to break out of that if you find that you're in the situation where you can't get out of a bad relationship, and you need to know why, and you need to find a solution. Shee is here for you today. She can give us some great advice. So call us 669-11938. Ho Shee is my guest today, and she's director and psychologist of the Counselling Place. Between Us will continue right after headline news and sports. Stay with us.
Man is a knot into which relationships are tied, but nothing comes between us. On 938 Live. It's always just between us, alright?
Thanks for staying tuned to Between Us and 928 Live. Today we've been talking all about toxic relationships, discussing this with my guest today, Ho Shee, who's director and psychologist at the Counselling Place. Now, waiting on the line right now is Anna, one of our listeners, who has to share a question and also a personal experience as well. Anna, thanks for holding on.
Thanks. Hello.
Hi, Anna. Maybe you want to relate to us because off air you were telling us a bit more about your situation, but maybe you'd like to share that a bit with Shee and with our listeners as well, so we can all benefit from learning from this.
I've been married for about a year, and we have a 5-year-old baby, 5-month-old baby. Sorry. Yeah. So I was feeling really low lately because our relationship has been spiraling, from good, and now it's getting bad. So I don't want it to go any worse than that. So I'm hoping that I'm not looking for a quick fix solution, but rather maybe a way to manage my emotions as well as try to make things better. Currently, the main problem is that we are not communicating enough, and also I feel that I'm emotionally drained because I've been supporting in terms of finance. And also, he's been always occupied with his computer games and football matches, that there's little time for us. Yeah, so I'm not sure whether it's really toxic because I feel it might get there, but I don't want it to get to that point. But lately I've been having really negative thoughts about the whole thing.
Right, thanks so much for sharing, Anna. Give us a minute and we'll talk a little bit to Shee now, because Shee, you're hearing Anna's situation. What's your take on it so far?
Firstly, I want to applaud Anna for trying to take the brave step to get help. I think definitely she's right in terms of it's probably good timing to start getting some help now, because I think what is an important first step is actually for the two party to be able to recognize that there is a problem in the situation. So if Anna is able to help her husband understand what is unhealthy or what's causing her to feel down, I think that would be very helpful. But I think if she's not able to do that by herself, then it's probably a good idea for her to maybe encourage him and see whether he's open to seeking professional help and have a professional counselor be a mediator between the two of them to help him recognize the tiredness that she's feeling and how she's feeling about the relationship, because obviously we can't force someone to change unless they are part of the process.
Right. Anna, I'm not sure if you heard that, but have you
Yes,
tried?
I did, yeah.
Have you tried talking to your husband about how tired and exhausted you are?
I've actually spoken to him a couple of times, and then he will change for a couple of days, and then we will go back to square one. So
Yeah, that's actually quite a common pattern, because I think what a lot of people need to recognize that the promises of change is not something that can actually be eventuated if they actually don't look at the root of the issue. And this is not to say he doesn't have the real desire. So it's not about whether he's genuinely wanting to change or not. But until he figure out what's the root of the issue and why the behavior is such, it's hard for the person to have a sustained period of change. So definitely he probably has some intention and effort put in terms of wanting to change, but I think this is why it's important to have professional help, because we can look at what's the barrier, what is causing him to be having some difficulty in changing. So these are important things that do need to go in depth with the person, even to their background, to see why the struggle is.
Right. And is that something you're comfortable with, the idea of professional help? Because you did mention, as we were chatting just now off air, that the last thing you want is to leave because you have a young child. Would you consider that?
I've spoken to him about it before, because actually I prompted him about going for some counselling, because our sexual life is also not, it's not working out in that department as well. I guess it's because of we lack the intimacy. Basically, I feel like he's more of a roommate rather than a husband.
Yeah, I think a lot of time people believe that they, rather than confronting the issue, they just want hopefully time would change the person or time would change the situation. But I think usually time doesn't work, and it's taking active action in the period of time that is what's going to make the changes. So oftentimes there are things that the person value that can help motivate them to take the step of change. So we need to look at what is it that they value. So be it the marriage, be it the kids, there are things that they value that would help them despite themselves, that they feel would help them to take the first step in seeking help.
Anna, we hope that clarifies some of your questions.
Yeah, but actually I've been trying to change myself too, to kind of adapt to him.
So
I found that it didn't work as well, because I was starting to become detached as well. So
yeah, but I wonder whether for you that's your way of coping rather than because I think you're right in terms of sometimes one person taking in the step, one person making a change can affect the dynamic. But I think what it seems to me is that what you're trying to do is to cope with the situation by detaching, which is not necessarily the most helpful. So I think it's about taking quite strategic changes. So get to know yourself, get to know your partner, their pattern of communication, and finding ways to change that. That is what would be more helpful.
Then besides seeking professional help, what's the next step that we can do if we can't,
well, in the meantime, I think what might be helpful is actually try to surround yourself with positive people, right? So you mentioned that you're a little bit down as well. So those people, not only it will help build your self-esteem, it will also be your support and resources. Be it friends, family, groups that you can join. Those are things that is quite helpful for you to actually, while you're at this time trying to wait for him to be ready to seek help, I think it's important for you to also receive the healing for yourself too.
And we hope that has helped you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for calling with your story as well. I mean, it's not just Anna that's benefiting from this. Everyone out there who's tuning in and who's going through a similar situation also learns from the experience. So really, Anna, thank you so much for very bravely coming forward to share your question. If anyone else would like to ask Shee any questions today about toxic relationships, give us a ring, 669-11938. Shee, let's talk a little bit about, seeking help, because we have touched a little bit based on Anna's situation already. But what are some ways that we can start dealing with this toxic relationship? I guess the first question is, should you always leave a toxic relationship?
I think before you decide whether you should leave and go, I think the first priority is safety. So if there is safety issues, I think that needs to be addressed regardless whatever your final decision is. So if you're not safe, then that is the first thing that you need to do, is to find a safe place, get yourself to a safe place, have a safety plan. So after that, the next step is actually to step out of denial. And I think what Anna was doing was quite good, which is she's starting to recognize what is really the situation and what are the problems in the relationship, and start seeking help for that. Secondly, you need to then start getting to know yourself and your pattern. Why are you in this relationship? What are some of the benefits that you're getting from the relationships? And therefore, how else can you get the benefits except from this toxic relationship? So outside of that. And also with the toxic relationship, as you can hear from Anna's story, there's a lot of emotional drain, pain, shame, and there's a lot of healing works that needs to happen. So all of this needs to happen regardless whether you're in and out or out of the relationship. So once you have done all this work, then you need to start thinking about what is the best way to let go of the toxic relationship. So let go can be actually leaving, but let go can also be you deciding firmly that I don't want a toxic relationship and take active steps to change the dynamic of the relationship.
Right. I think the challenge might be, Shee, that, a lot of times it's difficult to leave because the person makes it a little bit difficult to leave. I will relate to a question that a very close friend of mine probably has with regard to a toxic relationship before we go for a quick break. But her situation is that she's actually gotten involved with a married man, and it's a tricky situation because he has a child as well, and she's currently feeling very trapped because when she wants to leave, the man tries to emotionally manipulate her and tell her that, you can't leave, no one else will want you, look at yourself, would anyone else want to be with you? So there's a lot of emotional manipulation going on, and her question is, how can she get out of it? Because she actually starts believing that she doesn't deserve something better. So I will leave you with that for just a bit. And, if any of our listeners have any questions as well, Shee is my guest for today. Shee is director of the Counselling Place, and we're talking today about toxic relationships. The answer's coming your way in just a bit.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
Continuing our conversation today about toxic relationships with my guest today, Shee, director and psychologist at the Counselling Place. Now, Shee, I was just telling you earlier about a question from a friend of mine about how to get out of a situation where she's involved with a married man who is quite emotionally abusive. What are some steps she can take? Because she doesn't actually believe that there's hope outside that relationship.
So usually when we see clients like that in our office, the first work we do is actually to help them rebuild their self-esteem, and that may take some time actually. And as her friend, one of the things that you can help her is to start challenging some of the beliefs that she holds that is negative about herself. Because I think it's only with rebuilding of the self-esteem then the person would be able to have the strength to see what they really want, what they really need, and be able to ask it of the relationship or realize that the relationship is not going to be able to give it to them. So a lot of the first step would be actually helping to counter the negative message that the person has been receiving.
Okay, so the support system again is very important, as in Anna's case, because in any of these toxic relationships, if the person feels isolated and that they can't turn to anyone, that's when they start hurting themselves. So
yes, so therefore, as people who are caring for someone who is in such relationship, I think don't wait for the person to contact you. Reach out to them because they either feel too ashamed or they don't feel able to reach out to you, but be the person who is going to be there and be able to help them receive a different positive message about themselves.
I think all of us can play a part here as well. Whether you're a family member, you observe that a friend or a colleague is currently being embroiled in a relationship like that, we can all definitely lend a listening ear. We can also try to help out in certain ways, especially if it's a very physically abusive or emotionally abusive relationship that they need to get help with. On a final note, Shee, is there anything that you'd like to help us, in terms of taking it away from today's discussion? What are some steps you can take if you are currently in a toxic relationship, or if you know someone in a toxic relationship? What are some first few steps you can take to start recovering from that situation?
So the first step is to understand things won't get better until something different is happening. So that person does need help, the relationship does need help. You can get that from a professional, but you can also get it from your support system. Don't isolate yourself, reach out.
Right. So once again, don't be afraid to get help, because it doesn't mean you're weak. It isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's really the first step to being strong again, to getting out of that situation. Now, my guest today is Shee, who's director and psychologist of the Counselling Place. If you want to find out more, you can check out their website. Shee, perhaps you can give us the website.
So the website is www.thecounselingplace.com.
Right, so find out more there as well. And if you'd like to reach out to Shee about any of your issues. Also, a big thank you to all our callers calling in. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to take the call, but stay tuned as well. You can also post your questions and comments on our Facebook page, Official 938 Live. This has been Between Us and 938 Live. Shee, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Angela.
This has been Angela Lim on Between Us. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Man is a knot into which relationships are tied, but nothing comes between us. On 938 Live.